The darkness inside the steel-reinforced safe room was not just an absence of light. It was a physical weight, pressing down on them like the bottom of the ocean. It smelled of cold iron, stale recycled air, and the sharp metallic tang of pure terror. Ife pressed her back against the furthest corner of the wall, her spine grinding against the cold metal, her breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps that she tried desperately to silence, biting her own lip until she tasted copper. In her trembling arms she clutched two terrifyingly silent infants, Taeyong, the heir to a criminal empire, and Kimmy, her own flesh and blood. She pressed their small warm faces into the soft curve of her neck, praying that her racing pulse wouldn't wake them, praying that they wouldn't make a sound. Because outside that heavy magnetic door, the world had ended. The penthouse, once a fortress of silence, luxury, and untouchable power, was no longer a home. It was a slaughterhouse. The sound of heavy, tactical boots thudding against the imported Italian marble floors echoed like thunder, closer, louder, accompanied by the sickening mechanical click-clack of automatic weapons being racked and checked. "Check the nursery," a rough voice barked from the hallway, the sound muffled by the layers of steel but clear enough to stop Ife's heart cold in her chest. It was a voice void of humanity. The director said no survivors. Burn it all down. Make it look like an accident. Make sure the heir is dead. Ife's grip tightened on the babies until her knuckles turned white in the dark. Her eyes were wide, staring into the pitch black, stinging with tears she refused to let fall because she couldn't spare the energy to cry. Her mind flashed to the small paring knife she had managed to slide into the pocket of her robe when the lights first cut out, a pathetic, jagged little defense against an army of trained killers, but it was the only thing she had. She whispered a prayer in Igbo, the words vibrating silently in her throat, an ancient plea to the ancestors to shield them, to hide them, to keep them invisible in the belly of the beast. "Eni no ebeye," she mouthed into Kimmy's hair, kissing the soft curls. "Mama is here. Darkness will not take you. I will not let them take you." And then chaos erupted. It wasn't the polite, silenced gunfire of the movies. It was a deafening, roaring cataclysm of war that shook the walls and rattled the heavy door in its frame. A scream of pure, unadulterated male rage tore through the apartment, a sound so primal, so filled with pain and fury, that it made the floorboards vibrate beneath her feet. "Touch them and you die." It was Choi Jin-hyuk. It was the dragon. He was alone, outgunned and bleeding, fighting his way through 12 trained killers with nothing but a handgun and a love so violent it could level a city. Ife squeezed her eyes shut as the sounds of shattering glass, splintering wood, and screaming men filled the air, waiting in the dark to see if death or salvation would be the one to open that door. Welcome back, besties. This is Afro-Korean Soul Tales. Stop scrolling, stop moving, and listen to me. What you are about to hear is not just a story, it is an earthquake. We are talking about a love so dangerous it burned down a mafia empire. We are talking about a Nigerian queen who walked into the lion's den and tamed the beast not with a whip, but with a lullaby. If you are ready for high-stakes action, heart-stopping romance, and a daddy who will literally destroy the world for his family, smash that like button right now. Subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications, and tell me in the comments, who would you trust to save you when the lights go out? Let's rewind the clock 3 months, to the silence that started the war. 3 months before the bullets and the blood, there was only the crying. It was a sound that defied logic, a jagged, high-pitched wail that had been peeling the paint off the walls of the Gangnam penthouse for 6 hours straight. It wasn't just a cry. It was a siren of distress that drilled into the bone. Choi Jin-hyuk, the chairman of the Dragon Head Syndicate, the man who controlled the shipping lanes of Incheon and whose whisper could bankrupt a corporation, was a man undone. He stood in the center of his living room, a cavernous space designed to intimidate with its floor-to-ceiling bulletproof windows, black marble floors, and cold Italian leather furniture. But tonight, the fortress had been breached by a force he couldn't kill, couldn't bribe, and couldn't intimidate. His 3-month-old son, Taeyong. Jin-hyuk looked like a ghost of the feared crime lord. His bespoke charcoal suit, usually tailored to razor-sharp perfection, was wrinkled and stained with sour milk on the left shoulder, a badge of his failure. His tie hung loose like a noose around his neck, and his hair, typically slicked back with military precision, fell in damp, exhausted strands over eyes that were rimmed with red and hollowed by days without real sleep. He looked less like a king and more like a man standing on the edge of a cliff. He bounced the screaming infant against his chest with mechanical, desperate movements. His jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. He paced the length of the room, from the chrome fireplace to the glass wall overlooking the city, a caged animal in a prison of his own making. "What do you want?" he whispered harshly to the red-faced, thrashing bundle in his arms. "I have given you everything. The crib is imported from Sweden. The formula is the most expensive in the world, flown in from Germany. I have hired 4 experts with degrees on their walls. Why do you hate me? Why won't you just sleep?" Taeyong's only answer was to arch his back, stiffening his tiny body like a plank of wood, and unleash a fresh, ear-splitting shriek that sounded like pure, distilled heartbreak. It was a rejection that hit Jin Hyuk harder than any bullet ever had. "Sir," the head nanny whispered from the doorway. She was a woman in her 50s with 30 years of experience, but tonight she looked terrified to enter the blast zone. She wrung her hands, her face pale under the harsh recessed lighting. Perhaps the white noise machine again? Or the heated towel? We could try the car ride simulator. Jin Hyuk turned on her, his movement a blur of predatory grace even in his exhaustion. The look in his eyes made her step back. "We have tried the machine." His voice was a low rumble of thunder, dangerous and unstable. "We have tried the towel. We have tried swaddling. We have tried singing. We have tried silence. The doctor says he is fine. He is not fine. Look at him. He is tearing himself apart. He is screaming like he is being tortured." The nanny took a trembling step back, clutching her hands to her chest as if to protect her own heart. He misses the mother connection, sir. It is simply nature. A child knows what is missing. He knows she is gone. He is grieving." The air in the room dropped 20 degrees. Mentioning his dead wife was a death sentence in this house. She had died on the birthing bed. A strategic marriage that ended in a curse, leaving Jin Hyuk with an heir he didn't know how to love and a grief he didn't know how to process. He hadn't loved her, but he felt the guilt of her death every time the baby screamed. "Get out," he rasped, the words scraping his throat like broken glass. "Sir, get out." The scream frightened even the baby into a momentary, hiccuping pause before the wailing redoubled, louder and more frantic than before. The nanny fled, the heavy oak doors clicking shut with a finality that echoed in the empty room. Alone again. Just the king and the crying prince. Jin Hyuk walked to the window, looking down at the glittering sprawl of Seoul, millions of lights, millions of people sleeping, eating, living normal lives. He owned this city. He collected taxes from the shadows, he moved politicians like chess pieces, he decided who prospered and who vanished. Yet, standing there with a wet stain on his shoulder and a headache splitting his skull, he was the most powerless man in Korea. His phone buzzed on the glass table, vibrating aggressively against the surface. It was Director Jang, his second in command, a snake in a tailored suit who had been eyeing Jin Hyuk's throne for years. The text message lit up the dark room. "The council is waiting. The Russians are getting impatient. If you don't show tonight, they will smell blood. They will think the dragon is dying." Jin Hyuk looked at the message. He looked at his son, whose cries were turning into ragged, gasping sobs that sounded like he was drowning in dry air. He felt something snap inside him. Not a bone but a tether. For the first time in 20 years, Choi Jin Hyuk abandoned his post. He didn't care about the Russians. He didn't care about the territory or the reputation or the money. He grabbed his car keys, strapped the screaming baby into the car seat with trembling hands, and walked out the door into the storm. He drove without a destination, the black sedan cutting through the rain-slicked streets like a shark moving through dark water. He drove away from the neon lights of Gangnam, away from the luxury and the lies, ending up in the old district where the buildings huddled together, and the streetlights flickered with unreliable electricity. The rain lashed against the windshield, blurring the world into streaks of gray and black, mirroring the chaos in his mind. He saw a warm yellow glow spilling from a battered brick building on a corner that time had forgotten. A hand-painted sign hung crookedly above the door. The Hope Sanctuary for Women. He didn't know why he stopped. Maybe it was fate pulling the steering wheel. Maybe it was the madness of sleep deprivation guiding his hands. But he pulled over, the tires crunching on wet gravel. Through the rain-streaked window, he saw her. She was standing in a communal kitchen, visible through the glass. She was tall, statuesque, with skin the color of deep, rich mahogany that seemed to drink in the kitchen light and reflect it back as warmth. She wore a vibrant blue and gold headwrap that defied the gray weather, a crown of color in a monochrome world. She was stirring a large pot, steam rising around her like incense. And she was laughing. It was a full-bodied, head-thrown-back laugh that spoke of a joy so resilient it defied the gloom of the night. It was a sound of life. It was the most beautiful thing Jin Hyuk had seen in years. Taeyong screamed louder, a sound of pure misery that shattered the moment. Jin Hyuk didn't think. He grabbed the carrier and ran through the rain, shielding the baby with his own body, ruining his Italian leather shoes in the mud. He kicked the shelter door open, the bell chiming violently, destroying the peace inside. The laughter died instantly. 12 women froze. They stopped chopping vegetables, they stopped sweeping, they stopped talking. They stared at the doorway where a man in a ruined $1,000 suit stood dripping wet, holding a screaming baby like a bomb. His eyes were wild, his chest heaving. "I need help," Jin Hyuk rasped, his voice cracking, stripped of all authority, stripped of the dragon. The women scattered, terrified of the violence radiating off him. A man like him, scarred, intense, expensive, meant only trouble. They grabbed their children and backed away. All except one. The woman from the kitchen wiped her hands on a towel and walked toward him. She moved with a slow, deliberate rhythm, her dark eyes assessing him without a trace of fear. She stood tall, meeting his gaze. "You are in the wrong place, mister," she said, her Korean accented with a musical, lilting cadence that sounded like a song. "This is a shelter. No men allowed. You need to leave. Now." "My son." Jin Hyuk ignored her command, stepping forward, water dripping from his nose onto the linoleum floor. "He won't stop. 6 hours. He won't eat. I will pay you. I will buy this building. I will buy this street. Just make him stop." The woman stopped 3 feet away. She didn't look at his expensive watch or the outline of the gun under his jacket. She looked at the baby. Her expression softened, the sternness melting into something ancient and maternal. She leaned in, listening to the cry. "Money doesn't fix a baby's pain," she said softly, her voice cutting through his panic like a knife through silk. "He isn't sick, Oga. He is lonely." She reached out her hands. "Give him to me." Jin Hyuk hesitated. He trusted no one. His entire life was built on suspicion, on the knowledge that everyone wanted something from him. But looking into her eyes, he saw a strength that matched his own, a calmness that was unshakable. He was drowning, and she was the only solid ground in the universe. He handed his son to the stranger. Her name was Ife. She took the baby, not with the nervous stiffness of the paid nannies who treated Taeyong like breakable glass, but with a fluid, heavy comfort. She pulled him tight against her chest, skin to fabric to skin, and began to sway. A slow oceanic rhythm. "He is hungry," she observed, watching Taeyong root frantically against her chest, searching for comfort. "He refuses the bottle," Jin Hyuk said, defeated, leaning against the doorframe because his legs felt weak. "Imported formula. Goat milk. Soy. Everything." Ife looked at him, her gaze piercing. "He doesn't want plastic. He wants a mother. He wants the heartbeat. He wants the smell of skin. He is starving for connection." She turned to the other women, taking command of the room effortlessly. "Lock the door. I'm taking him to the quiet room." She looked back at Jin Hyuk. "You. Sit. Don't speak. Don't move. If you scare the other women, I will throw you out myself. And I am strong, mister. Do not test me." In the small, dim, quiet room, Ife sat in a rocking chair. The air smelled of lavender and old books, a scent of safety. Jin Hyuk stood by the door, dripping wet, feeling like an intruder in a temple. "I have a daughter," she said, her voice low and steady. "Kimmy. She is sleeping in the next room. I am still nursing. Your son needs what only a mother can provide. Do you consent?" Jin Hyuk's brain short-circuited. It was an intimacy he hadn't expected, a breach of protocols so massive he couldn't comprehend it. A stranger feeding his son? But then Taeyong let out another ragged sob, and Jin Hyuk's heart broke again. "Do it," he whispered. "Please." Ife adjusted her wrap and guided the frantic Taeyong to her breast. The silence was instantaneous. It hit the room like a physical wave, stunning in its suddenness. One moment there was the sound of torture. The next, peace. Taeyong latched, his tiny fists uncurling from their balls of rage, his breathing syncing with hers. He made small, satisfied sounds, drinking deeply, drinking life. Jin Hyuk slid down the wall to the floor, his expensive suit ruining on the carpet, and simply watched. He watched the way the shadows played on her face. He watched the way she rocked him. It was the holiest thing he had ever seen. How? He asked, his voice broken. How did you do that? I didn't do magic, Ife said, rocking gently and humming a song from her village in Enugu, a melody that sounded like the earth itself. I just gave him a safe place to land. You hold him like he is a transaction, Mr. Man. You hold him like you are afraid you will break him. Babies feel your fear. He needs to feel your calm. Jin Hyuk looked at this woman. A refugee with holes in her shoes saving a billionaire with everything. He watched the way the light caught the curve of her cheek, the way her hands moved with such confident tenderness. Come with me, he said, the idea forming before he could stop it. Be his nurse. Live in my house. Name your price. Ife laughed, a dry sound that held a hint of bitterness. I am not for sale. I have an asylum case stuck in court. If I leave here, immigration will find me. I have a daughter to protect. I cannot disappear into your world of fancy suits and hidden guns. Jin Hyuk stood up, the deal-maker reawakening. The dragon was back, but this time he was negotiating for love, not power. I own the judges. I own the immigration officers. Give me 1 month to stabilize him. I will get you permanent residency. I will get Kemi citizenship. You will never have to run again. You will never have to look over your shoulder. It was a deal with the devil, and Ife knew it. She looked at the man, dangerous, desperate, and undeniably powerful. She looked at the baby in her arms, finally at peace. And she thought of Kemi, sleeping on a thin mattress in a shelter that could be raided any day. She nodded. 1 month. But I am not your servant. You treat me with respect. You do not order me. You do not shout. Or I walk out the door, and you can explain to your son why the silence ended. Stop right there. Can you feel that tension? That isn't just the temperature rising. That is the spark before the explosion. We have a Mafia king who is used to blind obedience and a Nigerian queen who bows to no one. How long do you think they can live under the same roof before the walls burn down? If you are loving this clash of worlds, drop a fire emoji in the comments right now. And don't forget to share this with your best friend. You know she needs this drama in her life. Let's see what happens when the queen moves into the castle. The penthouse changed. It had to. Ife moved in the next day with Kemi strapped to her back in a colorful cloth wrapper, carrying 2 battered suitcases that held her entire life. She walked into the penthouse, looked at the chrome, the glass, the black leather, and shook her head. This place has no soul, she declared, her voice echoing in the foyer. It looks like a hospital for robots. She demanded the nursery be moved. It is in the West Wing, Jin Hyuk explained, trying to maintain his authority. It is secure. It is too far, Ife countered, hands on her hips. He needs to hear me breathe. Move the crib to the room next to mine. Or I leave. Jin Hyuk moved the crib. For 3 weeks, the house underwent a transformation. The sterile smell of ozone and expensive cologne was replaced by the rich, spicy aroma of jollof rice, pepper soup, and frying plantains. The silence was replaced by the sound of Afrobeat, mixing with the rain against the windows. Ife didn't cower before the dragon. She scolded him for working too late. She forced him to take off his jacket, to roll up his sleeves, to hold Taeyong without a shirt so the baby could feel his skin. You are his father, not his CEO, she would say, walking into his home office and taking the phone out of his hand. She would place the baby on his tattooed chest, her fingers brushing against his ink, sending a jolt of electricity through him. Talk to him. Tell him about your day. He needs to know your voice isn't just for giving orders. And slowly, the ice around Jin Hyuk's heart began to crack. He found himself coming home early, cutting meetings short, just to watch her teach Taeyong to roll over, just to hear her laugh with Kemi. He found himself standing in the doorway of the kitchen, watching her dance while she cooked, feeling a strange, terrifying warmth spreading in his chest. One evening late, Jin Hyuk found Ife on the balcony, looking out at the city. She looked sad. The wind was blowing her robe around her, and she looked like a goddess contemplating the mortal world. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, standing beside her but not too close, afraid that if he got closer, he wouldn't be able to stop himself from touching her. "I am thinking that this city is very big and I am very small," she said, not looking at him. "I am thinking about how easy it is to get lost here. I am thinking about my home in Enugu, about the red earth and the green hills. It feels very far away." Jin Hyuk turned to her. "You are not small, Ife. You take up more space in this house than anyone I have ever met. You have filled every corner of it." She looked at him surprised, her dark eyes searching his face. "Is that a compliment, Mr. Choi?" "It is a fact," he replied, his voice rough. "Before you came, this house was a tomb. Now it is a home. I don't want you to be lost. I want you to be here." The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words, charged with an electricity that terrified them both. He wanted to kiss her. He wanted to consume her. But he was the dragon and she was the light, and he knew that darkness only destroys the light. So he stepped back. But the world outside was not peaceful. The bubble they had created was fragile, and sharp objects were approaching. Director Jang made his move. He summoned Jin Hyuk to a meeting in the underground war room. The air was thick with cigar smoke and betrayal. The other captains sat around the table, their faces unreadable masks. Jang slid a folder across the mahogany table. It stopped right in front of Jin Hyuk. "Your late wife's family has filed for custody," Jang smiled, his eyes cold and predatory. "They say you are unfit. They say you are unstable." Jin Hyuk opened the folder. Inside were photos. Photos of Ife walking in the park with the babies. Photos of her grocery shopping. Photos of her entering the penthouse. "They say you are living with a foreign woman," Jang continued, his voice oozing fake concern. "An illegal immigrant with a rejected asylum case. They say you are endangering the heir by exposing him to a criminal element. They say you are immoral." Jin Hyuk's hand curled into a fist. "She is a nurse. She is saving his life. To the court she is a liability," Jang said. "The hearing is in 3 days. The young family has political connections. They will take the boy. And once you lose the heir, you lose your legitimacy as chairman. The Russians will not deal with a man who cannot even keep his own son." Jin Hyuk drove home, rage vibrating in his bones, his hands shaking on the wheel. He felt the trap closing around him. He stormed into the penthouse, the sanctuary he had come to love, bringing the storm with him. He found Ife in the nursery folding tiny clothes. She looked up, seeing the look on his face, and immediately stood up. "What happened?" "They want to take him," he said, his voice hollow. "The court hearing is in 3 days. They will use you against me. They will say I am immoral. They will say I am unfit." Ife stood up, her eyes flashing fire. "So fight them. You are the dragon, aren't you?" "I can't fight with guns," Jin Hyuk said, pacing the room, tearing at his hair. "I need a shield. I need to look respectable. I need a wife." Ife stared at him. The silence was deafening. "Excuse me. Marry me." Jin Hyuk stepped closer, invading her personal space, his eyes desperate. "It solves everything. Immediate residency for you. Legitimacy for me. The court cannot take a child from a stable, married home. It is the only way." Ife's eyes narrowed. She stepped back, crossing her arms. "A fake marriage? To a gangster? You want to buy me like you buy your politicians? You want to own me?" Jin Hyuk's control snapped. He grabbed her shoulders, not to hurt her but to make her understand. "I am not trying to buy you. I am asking you to save my son. Because without you he dies. Because without you I die. Because I trust you." The vulnerability in his voice stopped her. She looked at this dangerous, broken man and saw the terrified father beneath. She saw the man who had warmed milk at 3 a.m. She saw the man who had let her daughter paint his fingernails pink. "It is a real marriage," she said quietly, her voice steady. "Legally binding. Kimmy is adopted as your daughter. Full rights. Same inheritance as Taeyong. And we are partners. No secrets. No mistresses. No hiding me in the shadows. If I am Mrs. Choi, I am Mrs. Choi in the daylight. Jin Hyuk looked at her with something approaching awe. Done, he said instantly. The courtroom was a theater of cruelty. The opposing lawyers painted Ife as a fraud, a gold digger, a refugee looking for a payout. They projected her mugshot from her asylum application on the screen. They mocked her accent. They mocked her background. Jin Hyuk sat next to her, his body radiating a murderous heat. He wanted to kill them all. But Ife placed a hand on his knee, stopping him. When she took the stand, she was wearing a stunning fusion of Nigerian Ankara and traditional hanbok that she had designed herself. A bold pattern of blue and orange cut into the elegant lines of the Korean dress. She looked like royalty. She looked unbreakable. You ask if I am qualified? She asked the judge, her voice ringing clear and strong, silencing the whispers. You talk about degrees? You talk about bloodlines? I am the one who holds him when the nightmares come. I am the one who knows his heartbeat. I am the one who taught him to smile. A mother is not biology, Your Honor. A mother is the one who stays. A mother is the one who cleans the vomit and sings the songs. She turned and pointed to Jin Hyuk. And this man? You call him a monster. You call him a criminal. I see a man who changed his entire life to save his son. I see a man who learned to love when the world taught him only hate. I see a father. And I love him for it. The room gasped. Jin Hyuk stared at her, his heart hammering against his ribs. She had gone off script. She had said the words. The judge looked at the files. He looked at Ife. He looked at the young family lawyers who were sneering. Custody remains with the father, the judge ruled, banging the gavel. Case dismissed. They walked out of the court hand in hand, cameras flashing, a fake couple that felt dangerously beautifully real. In the car, the silence was thick. Did you mean it? Jin Hyuk asked, looking out the window. Mean what? That you love me. Ife smiled, a small secret smile. I am a very good actress, Mr. Choi. But her fingers interlaced with his, and she didn't let go. That night they celebrated. Jin Hyuk opened a bottle of vintage wine. Ife made pepper soup. They laughed. They put the babies to sleep. Then the power cut. The penthouse plunged into darkness. Stay down, Jin Hyuk hissed, his voice changing instantly from husband to killer. He moved to the window, peering out. Security is down. The cameras are looped. It's a hit. Who? Ife whispered, grabbing the babies from their cribs. Jang. He knows he lost in court. Now he is trying the old way. He grabbed Ife's face, his hands rough but urgent. Go to the safe room. Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone but me. Anyone. Jin Hyuk. Gio. She ran. She ran into the darkness, hearing the elevator ding, hearing the first shots fired. And we are back in the safe room. The silence. The fear. The sound of the battle outside. Ife holding the knife. The gunfire stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. It stretched for minutes. Hours. Then a knock. 3 distinct taps. Ife. It was a whisper. A broken, wet whisper. She scrambled to the keypad, typing the code with shaking fingers. The heavy door hissed open. Jin Hyuk fell into the room. He was covered in blood, some his, most not. His shirt was shredded. He had a cut above his eye that was bleeding freely. But he was alive. He dropped to his knees, pulling Ife and the children into his arms, burying his face in her stomach. He was shaking. The dragon was shaking. I thought I lost you, he sobbed, the sound tearing out of his chest. I thought I lost you. We are here, Ife whispered, weeping, wiping the blood from his face with her hands. We are here. You saved us. Jin Hyuk looked up at her, his eyes wild and raw. I'm done. I am dissolving the syndicate. I am selling the territories. I am going legit. I don't care what it costs. I don't care if we lose the money. I cannot live like this. I cannot risk you. He cupped her face. I love you. I didn't know I could love anything, but I love you. You are my heart. You are my breath. Ife smiled through her tears, pulling him down for a kiss that tasted of salt and iron and survival. It took you long enough to say it, Oga. 2 years later. The sun is shining on a garden in the suburbs of Seoul. The penthouse is a memory, sold to pay for the lawyers and the transition to legal business. The Kong Foundation now runs the community centers in the old district. Jin Hyuk is pushing Kemi on a swing. She is 2 years old now, speaking a mix of Korean, English, and Igbo. She shrieks with delight. Higher, Appa. Higher. Careful, princess. Jin Hyuk laughs, looking younger, his face unlined, wearing jeans and a t-shirt. Taeyong is chasing a puppy through the grass, stumbling on his toddler legs, shouting at the dog in Korean. Ife walks out onto the porch. She is heavily pregnant with their third child. She holds a tray of lemonade. She looks at her husband, the former king of shadows, now a man standing in the light. Lunch is ready, she calls out. Jin Hyuk catches Kemi, kisses her forehead, and walks over to his wife. He wraps his arms around her waist, resting his hands on the swell of her belly. Director Jang sent a letter from prison, he says casually. He wants a visitation. Let him rot, Ife says cheerfully. We have a birthday party to plan. Jin Hyuk looks at her. Are you happy, Mrs. Choi? Ife looks at the garden. She looks at the life they built from the ashes of his empire. She looks at the peace. I am home, Jin Hyuk. Finally home. Good, he says, kissing her deep and slow. Because I am never letting you go. And the dragon smiled because he had finally found his heart. And breathe. Oh my goodness, my heart. From a cold, dark penthouse to a sunlit garden. From a man who couldn't stop a baby from crying to a father who built a paradise for his family. That is the power of love, besties. That is the Afro-Korean soul connection. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that love can heal even the deepest wounds, then you need to share this video right now. Send it to your sister, your mom, your best friend. Let's spread this love. Drop a comment below. What should they name the new baby? I'm voting for Chittybube if it's a boy. Don't forget to subscribe to Afro-Korean Soul Tales for more epic romances, more drama, and more heart. I love you guys. Stay blessed, stay dangerous, and keep loving hard. Peace.